I need to practice. Hang on. There we go.
My intention today, Tim, is to do more of our civilian submitted podcast ideas, but there's so much other stuff to get through first. So many parish notices and follow-up and stuff, so I'm going to try to machine gun through it.
Right.
But, yeah, there's just lots here.
Can I just ask a question from the outset? It's a bit dangerous if people are really enjoying their own ideas more than our ideas, because pretty soon they'll twig that they don't need us, really.
I don't think they're enjoying their ideas more than ours. I think this is just a reminder of how good our ideas are.
Right, okay. This is like a little sabbatical, that a fast.
You don't know how good you had it back when it was Tim and Brady's ideas.
That's right. This is when you know you're going out for a great dinner, so you skip lunch, so you're really hungry. This is kind of like the skipped lunch.
But first, we've got lots of other stuff to talk about. I wanted to start with a message I got from Alex in Gateshead.
Right.
Alex is a Patreon supporter, and we sent him some Spoon of the Week collector cards. He was lucky to be chosen by the algorithm. He said he received them, and his girlfriend found them really weird. But as added value, he said, I attach my attempt at a 12 Apostles mnemonic, which is both very late and humbly produced. It turns out some of the apostles' names are harder to rhyme than others. For those of you who've forgotten, and how could you, Tim and I have got a bit of an affection for songs that are used to help remember the names of the 12 apostles. Alex has made one, and it goes a little bit like this.
Hello friends, my name is Jesus. Will you take the time to meet us? I am one and they are 12. Let us introduce ourselves. Listen well, you'll learn our names. Let's start off with my friend James. Number 2, he is the same. Son of Alpheus, also James. I am sweet, but this guy's sweeter. Have you met my good friend Peter? He travelled far farther than you. Peter's brother, here's Andrew. It's his job, you know he'll tax you. Don't hold it against poor Matthew. The 6th one's here, I'm glad he is. 'Cause here comes my friend Thaddeus. The 7th here, he's good for rhyming. Here's the Canaanite called Simon. He follows me because I will it. My devoted friend called Philip. Who's the doubting one among us? Look no further than Thomas. This one said, I'll follow you. Well, my name's not Bartholomew. We're almost there, we're nearly done. But don't let me forget, dear John. That's your lot, we've reached the end. Now our names I know you will remember. Judas.
That's not sketchily produced at all. That sounds pretty amazing to me, to be honest.
Awesome.
I know.
I'm not joking. I reckon I've listened to that 30 times.
Wow.
Yeah, I love it.
He's got a Spotify check coming to him. That's great.
I think that's fantastic.
It is, yeah, very clever.
I loved it.
I love the ending. That's great as well. That's really nice.
I don't know. I think the ending, I think it's so good. The ending kind of is a bit of a dare. It's like he's not taking himself seriously enough by putting that little Judas there. Like, I feel like, oh no, don't ruin it. You made something great there.
Well, when it's played on radio anyway, the announcers will be speaking over the ending or fading into the next song. So that's what they tend to do with the really big hits.
Yeah, no, I loved it. I loved the cheesy rhymes.
Well done. Really well done.
Well done.
Fantastic effort. Yeah.
Well done. I got back in touch with Alex and I said, like, are you a musician? Do you do music for your job? Like, he said, no, not at all. I'm very much a hobbyist. A professional musician might have noticed before recording that they were subconsciously ripping off 99 Luftballons. Sorry, Nina.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay.
I didn't
Not
really
too
get
closely,
that,
though, but
in
yeah.
hindsight.
Yeah.
Anyway, brilliant, Alex. I love it. I love it. If you want to write a piece of music, a song to help Tim remember the 12 apostles, because he really should remember them, a man in his job, but he just can't do it.
I can't do it, no.
So,
no.
Yeah.
And this song hasn't helped yet. I've been more enjoying the song than its purpose. I need to get in with the message of the song, not just be caught up in its beauty.
You may remember we've talked about Tim's nail biting problems, and then someone else got in touch and said every time they bite their nails, their partner or someone says Tim really loudly to scare them, and that reminds them that they're biting their nails. Andrew from Virginia got in touch and said, in response to the nail-biting conversation in episode 151, I thought I'd mention I was able to quit nail biting only after my brother, at my request, started making squirrel barking noises when he saw me biting my nails. An example of the squirrel barks he makes are attached. Feel free to play the audio on the podcast if you choose. Okay, people, brace yourself. This is not pleasant. This is the noise Andrew's brother makes every time he bites his nails.
That's a bad noise. Fair play. That's it. That'd work if there was some sort of software that was hooked up to my fingers somehow an app, every time my nails got near my mouth that played. That would help. That would definitely help. That's good.
Yeah, sort of Pavlovian response type thing going on. I don't know, but all right. I like it. I like it.
Play it again, man.
All right, here you go. Just in case you're biting your nails, here it is. We've heard from various people whose names don't match their interests, their tastes, their occupations and things like that. Memorably, we heard from Beersy, someone whose surname was Beers that doesn't drink alcohol. Today we've heard from John. John says, my wife and I are vegetarian, but have the surname Lamb. People always give that a good giggle, although I sometimes remind them that lamb is also an animal, not just meat.
Indeed.
So there you go.
That's right. Yes.
John Lamb. John Lamb and his wife, vegetarians.
I also know a lamb. Lammy.
Do you? I think I know. I think I've known a lamb or two in my time. Do you like the taste of lamb, the meat?
I literally had lamb for lunch today, and it was a gyros. Which is sort of...
Nice.
I don't know what they're called in different countries. Souvlaki or gyros, like pita bread rolled up with meat and a few...
Gyros and things, yeah.
Yeah, and lettuce, tomato and some tabbouleh. It's from a little place around the corner here on Unley Road called Savas Yos. I'll give them an ad because they're just lovely people. Kind of people when you phone up, they say, hello, Tim, because they remember my number, which is very nice of them, or a bit of an indictment on how often I go there.
Yeah. I think it's more an indictment on how often you have it, but yeah, that is nice. I have become a big fan more now of having the meat. Often it's called doner meat over here in the UK. Of having the meat with chips, not in the pita bread. I like it with chips and a bit of sauce.
Oh, yeah. This is lovely. This couple today was saying, you always order lamb, why don't you get chicken? And I said, well, I don't know, I feel like I have a lot of chicken and lamb's a bit rarer, and so I'll have that. And she goes, no, you need to have the combination. And then she had she was waiting for my lamb to be prepared by her husband. She hands me over just a whole bunch of chicken, like on a napkin, and just said, here, taste the chicken, taste the chicken. I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, that fair cop, that's pretty good chicken. So I'm going to have a combination next time.
All right, go the combo. Lamb and chicken together. If your surname's Chicken, get in touch and tell us if you like eating chicken.
Oh, indeed. But, man, I need to remind you, the chickens are also an animal. They're not just meat.
Heard from Caitlin. Caitlin says, I remember a couple of episodes ago you sharing information about a baby that was born and given Brady as part of his name. It got me thinking about the role that Unmade played in my birth story. I've edited this down a bit. Caitlin says, at the hospital we were in a room waiting for the induction and my husband kept having to move the car, leaving me on my own or just with the midwife for some time. During this time, the Unmade podcast was chosen as the thing to keep me going through the contractions. For about an hour, I was listening to the podcast through everything. I have to say, when Labour became more established, we switched to Taylor Swift. And once our son was born, we played the song Miracle by 1st October. Even now, with my little boy, Cyrus, bonus points for Bible trivia, we listen to the podcast together around the house. We've actually got to a place where when I say, shall we listen to Tim and Brady? He gives a little smile. The podcast in general has kept me company during some difficult times, but now some happy ones as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Thanks, Caleb.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Oh.
Lovely. Nice. Yeah.
Just give me a moment here, man. That's wonderful.
I'm not crying, you're crying.
If you've given birth to the Unmade podcast before, write in and let us know.
Yeah. Well, I like to feel that you and I did give birth to the Unmade podcast. But yeah, if you've been listening to the Unmade podcast while giving birth.
Oh, indeed. Yes.
Yeah. What's Cyrus in the Bible?
I have no idea. I'm trying to think. I don't remember a Cyrus.
I don't know. Oh, no.
Maybe he's one of the apostles and I keep forgetting him. I don't think so.
No, it wasn't in the song. It would have been in the song. Billy Ray Cyrus, that little known apostle.
For those that are less ancient than we are, that's Miley Cyrus's dad, who was, it was a one-hit wonder back in the day, yeah.
No, Miley Cyrus is Billy Ray Cyrus's daughter to us.
Fair cop, yes. He had one heck of a mullet. I mean, a real mullet.
And I don't know if we've ever discussed the fact that Tim once dressed up as Billy Ray Cyrus and mimed Achy, Breaky, Heart in front of our whole school as part of a performance we did. Can I tell the whole story?
Go on, yeah, that's great.
Tim was like, to dress as Billy Ray Cyrus, Tim wore, I don't know if you were wearing like a white t-shirt or a white sleeveless vest, looking very sexy, but you were wearing like a red shirt over the top, because Billy Ray Cyrus wore like a red shirt over a white t-shirt when he sung Achy Breaky Heart in the music video. Don't tell my heart, my achy breaky heart. And there was a girl in the audience at the school that I think Tim took a bit of a shine to. And he'd written on the t-shirt, I think on the back of the t-shirt, "Will you go out with me?" And halfway through the song, he was doing this sexy dance and like this sexy wobble of his back, and he just pulled off the shirt to reveal this "Will you go out with me?" thing, but didn't have her name on it or anything. I think afterwards you went up to her and said, "Did you get that was for you?"
Did you get my message? And she goes, "I thought that was for me." Yeah. I can't believe I did that now. That is hilarious. That's audacious. Oh man.
Was she another one of those, like, girlfriend in quote marks for 2 hours?
We went out for a week. It was 1 week.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's right.
She was a keeper.
That's right. One of the longer relationships in high school.
But back in those days, going out didn't mean anything other than you could just say, we're going out. You never actually went out, did you?
We didn't co-sign mortgage documents or anything like that. No, we just sort of hung out, and I caught the train with her to the city after school. Do you remember she had such a wonderful smell? She had that lovely vanilla perfume.
Yeah, she wore really nice perfume.
Yeah, so she did. That counts for something.
She was
lovely.
She was the nicest smelling girl in school. Or she wore too much perfume, but to guys of our age, that didn't matter. That just meant you smelled her even when she walked past.
Because we're just used to smelling other guys, which is horrendous. So it was just an absolute gift into year 11 or year 12 or whatever it was. Yeah.
There we go.
Billy Ray Cyrus, very tight jeans.
Sexy move. Sexy back dance, Tim.
Yeah.
Sexy back dance. Yeah.
Wow.
It was nice. Did the job. All right.
I had forgotten that.
Shout out to her if she's listening.
Don't tell my heart, my achy, breaky heart. I just don't think you'd understand.
We talked about damage to electronic devices after Tim had his iPhone run over in the road in the same week that my son's nanny put his iPad in the oven and baked it. And I encouraged other people to get in touch with their tales of woe. And there have been a lot of them, so I can't read them all, but I thought I'd go through a few. Luke from New Zealand. A few months ago, I decided to jog home from work with my laptop in my bag. Unfortunately, I forgot that I also had margarine in my bag, and it leaked everywhere, destroying my $3,000, that's New Zealand dollars, so about $20 US, Apple laptop.
How does margarine... This is butter for people that don't know what margarine is. How does that destroy a laptop?
I think everyone knows what margarine is, man.
It's not like a weird Australian, New Zealand product, is it?
I don't think so.
You put it on bread. And bread, for those that don't know, is
Tim, the Unmade podcast where Tim describes what margarine is.
We have a global audience, man. I'm trying.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. For those people on other planets who are listening... A bag is a device in which you carry objects. I do have questions about why there was margarine in the bag. Maybe it had been bought, because it was needed at home. But I will share a picture in the notes and on screen on YouTube and stuff of the margarine affected laptop, because it's been taken apart and it's gone all through the circuitry and everything. You have to see this picture. This is a laptop that has been destroyed by margarine.
I would like to see. Can you show me now? Like, is it melted? Is that how it works? It's like it's in liquid?
Oh, all right. Yeah, no, I'll send it to you.
Because when I think of margarine, I think it's being evenly spread across the top of the laptop in quite a neat fashion, like you do on bread, and you could just scrape it off.
Let me find it.
Oh, wow.
And
okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's gone.
That's awesome. Oh, that's great. Yeah, cool.
Right.
That's a lot of margarine everywhere.
Okay, Andrew. When I was a young teenager, I was skateboarding towards a friend's house with my phone in an open pocket. This had never been an issue before. As I popped off the path to cross the road, the phone jumped out of my pocket, slid across the road. It kept sliding until it met a drain, and this was when my world entered slow motion. As the phone slid across the drain, it stopped. The feeling of relief was incredible. Wow, that was close. 2 seconds later, it dropped.
Ugh.
In the end, a friend let me dangle from the ankles to try to retrieve it, but it was completely ruined. I did manage to recover the SIM card, but that was it.
Well, hang on a second. He couldn't breach the phone, but he could reach to put the pin in to snap out the SIM card. That just seems like...
No, he didn't say he couldn't get the phone. He said the phone was ruined.
Oh,
he got the phone.
I was going to say, you can't reach the phone, but I was able to reach up with a pin and press the little button to get the SIM card.
I was able to get the case off and then get the pin in the hole. The thing that gives me anxiety about that story, and it's something that's been giving me a lot of anxiety lately for some reason because of stories have happened, is the thought of him being dangled down the drain by his ankles. I have a real irrational fear of being one of those people who gets, you know, these people that go caving and then get stuck in a cave and can't go forward or back, and like they're like lying on their back in a really, really narrow space, and you get stuck. I've suddenly got this real fear of being stuck in a cave or stuck in a narrow gap and not being able to get out. And I'm just imagining being stuck in a drain like that, you know.
Because you might lose your phone, or because you might lose your life.
Might lose my life, or I don't know. It just gives me the heebie-jeebies. There's a famous story of a guy who got trapped on his own in a cave in a really awkward position, and then just was stuck there until he died. And they found him later, like, you know. And that story really freaks me out.
There's that guy that got his arms stuck between the boulders and hacked it off. Remember that? Gosh. Oh, they made a film out of that even, didn't they? Yeah.
Indeed, they did. Yeah.
Wow. Thanks, Brady. Now we're all feeling a little tense.
DJ Weaver 29 works for a school district that issues iPads in the US. So I've seen my share of broken iPads. A lot of the damage is intentional, shooting with BB guns, playing football, hitting another student with it. But the worst damage I ever saw was actually unintentional. A student put their iPad in the washing machine and it took a proper beating. I was initially quite skeptical that the student had accidentally thrown their iPad in the washing machine until their parent explained that it had been picked up with a weighted blanket, so they didn't notice the iPad was there. We wound up replacing the student's iPad as it was their first offence and saved the broken one as an example of what not to do in our unofficial Museum of Broken iPads.
Right.
The Museum of Broken iPads. I want to see that.
That would be great. Little placards and little stands everywhere, all very formal. New students walk
it's like
along.
the Boulevard of Broken Dreams. The Museum of Broken iPads.
You're just the corridor that leads up to the IT department, both sides. You know, yeah. It's nice.
Yeah, each with a little spotlight on it.
Yeah.
It's really cool. Someone called The Tim said, "We were eating dinner when my wife said, 'Hey, where's my phone?' We couldn't find it anywhere until someone went for seconds of soup and lifted a ladle full of thick red soup and smartphone out of the pot. She'd apparently set it on a ledge just above the pot of hot soup, and when she walked away, it slid right into the pot. It was probably in there for at least 20 minutes, and this was before most phones were waterproof, so it was quite dead."
We spend an enormous amount of our time looking for my wife's phone, and part of I think the worst decision, or one of the worst decisions made in our household, was her getting a black cover protector
Yeah.
And it just blends into, even though it's black, so it blends into the floor of the car, which is where it is 90% of the time. Or
She doesn't strike me as a black phone case kind of gal.
I think it was a case of the other one, broke or something or was wrong, and then she just bought the cheapest one she could find one day that's hard plastic that wouldn't break. And but also she seems to go out of her way to put it down on black surfaces as well. Like, so we're forever just walking around going, it's just blended into the background somehow, like an optical illusion. And I end up having to phone it and wait for it, and then it's not there, which means it's in the car. And then we go down to the car and get it. And so we finally convinced her to put a massive sticker on the back of it, so at least you can see it across the room.
Unmade podcast sticker?
No, it's the sticker of the Tasmanian Devils, a new Australian rules football team from her home state that's coming in soon. So... yeah.
Okay.
But that's kind of a dark green sticker, so it's not even that helpful, but at least you can tell that something's there that's physical. Yeah. Otherwise, it's like the second challenge in Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You know when he walks out and he's got to step into nothing, but it's only nothing on one angle, that actually there's something there. And that's what my wife's phone is like. It's like it's only when you feel it you realise it's there.
I often think about that challenge. How could you not see that bridge if there's like a gap below? Like, I don't know.
It must only work from the exact height that he is. You know what I mean? Like a person's eye line. As soon as you come down, you must see it at a different angle.
Yeah. I know they do the camera move and stuff. But anyway, I have some friends who are like an elderly couple. And I think the wife's just getting a little bit more absent-minded as you do. And she now wears her phone in like a sort of a plastic sleeve around her neck with like a ribbon type necklace thing, so it hangs around her neck at about chest height. So because she was lost it so often, so now she can't lose it.
Like Flavor Flav from Public Enemy does. Just
well, kind of that. I think that's admitting defeat when you start actually wearing your phone around your neck so you don't lose it. That's like, all right, yeah, this is a problem. That's
like riding your mum's mobile on the back of your wrist. It's like, yeah, you probably shouldn't be out alone. That's right.
This comes from Aaron. Hi, Dr. Harron. Regarding the story about your son's iPad winding up in the oven, I just wanted to make sure you know to thoroughly decontaminate your oven afterwards when you've burnt plastic in it. I'm not sure what other heavy metals or various chemicals are present in an iPad, but they may also have left harmful residue, so be wary of that as well. So, that's a, nice, considerate message. But the reason I'm reading it is to close a circle, because the message comes from Aaron Preacher. So we've got a PS also. Please add me and my immediate family to the list of people whose last names do not reflect their interests. I'm agnostic, my wife and daughter are Jewish, and my parents are atheists. Aaron Preacher.
Well, they might preach atheism and agnosticism. So, there you go.
Well, he's certainly quite preachy with telling me how to decontaminate my oven and not endanger the health of my family.
No, I think he's very wise. I mean, I'm paranoid about that kind of stuff, but I was holding back telling you, man, you better get that checked out, because I'm very much... I'm hyper vigilant about all that kind of stuff. So anyway, but you're a very responsible person. Leave it with you. Who am I to preach?
Yes. Well, you are a preacher.
Indeed,
you are allowed to preach.
My contract says I have to, so it's what I do.
Before we get to podcast ideas from our listeners, civilians, you may remember in the last episode we heard from someone who I called Wickus. I've now learned it should have been pronounced Wickus. It's a South African Afrikaans name. And Wickus suggested a podcast about people who'd been in a coma, the dreams they had, experiences, things like that. And Wickus said he himself had been in a coma and had had an interesting experience. He didn't elaborate very much on it. And I wanted to know more. So, being the investigative journalist that I am, I emailed Wickus and said, do you want to do a Zoom call with me? He said yes. And I spoke to him about his coma experience. And I thought I'd share that with you now.
Cool.
If I may.
So he's out of the coma now, yeah? Just clear.
He is out of the coma. Okay. He's out.
Nice.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's going to be pretty quiet listening.
Yeah. Here we go. How often do people say Wickus?
Not that often. It's an Afrikaans name. And seeing as a lot of people in South Africa at least understands Afrikaans, they know that the W is pronounced as a V, so not too often.
Okay, it's just on the Unmade podcast you get called Wickus.
Yeah,
Not anymore. Now you're Wickus.
luckily.
All right. Now, you sent in an idea for a podcast, which was talking to people who had been in comas.
Yeah.
Because you were in a coma.
Yeah, that was what I was told. I wasn't aware at the time, but apparently for 2.5 weeks. I believe it's a medical induced coma. Please don't quote me on that. I'm not a medical professional, but that's what I understand I was in.
How did that come to be, Wickus? What happened? Something went wrong.
Yeah, so I was diagnosed with COVID, and 7 days into my 10-day quarantine, I got pneumonia as well. So I tested my oxygen levels. It was supposed to be at 92. It was at the time about 85. Went to the emergency room. They immediately admitted me to hospital, and 2 days later I went to ICU with serious COVID pneumonia, placed on a ventilator, sedated, or what I call an induced coma. Yeah, and later what they call had a tracheostomy, which is where they insert the pipe into your throat from the ventilator. And it's during that coma time that I had interesting dreams. The interesting part to me is not per se the dream part, but the waking up part, because I thought that what happened in my coma or in my dreams was actually reality.
Before I come to the dreams, I want to talk to you about that. Let me go back a few steps first, though. The medical staff chose to put you under sedation or into this coma for your own good.
Yes.
Were you consulted about this? Do you remember any of this? Did they say to you, Wickus, we think this is what we need to do? Or were you out of it? Or
I believe that I was consulted, although I cannot remember. So I was admitted to hospital on a Monday morning about 6 o'clock in the morning. And the first day I was in the general ward, and I remember everything. I remember the doctor came to me and told me, look, you're lying in bed and you're doing nothing else than that. You don't want to overexert yourself. So you're not even standing up to go to the toilet. So that I remember. I remember the next morning, the doctor told me that they are considering taking me to ICU because my condition is worsening. And the second half of the second day, I can't remember. And the first thing I remember after I was woken up from being sedated is when my wife came to visit me the first time, the second day after I was woken up.
I was going to ask if you had sort of loved ones at your bedside during this time. You mentioned you had a wife, yeah?
Yeah. So at the time, so my wife came to visit me. It was COVID time, so it was actually, she didn't know whether she'll be able to visit me with all the regulations and stuff going on. But the hospital allowed her to come visit me every 2 days for about an hour while I was sedated. And luckily, every day for an hour after I was woken up, because I was in an isolated room in an isolated ward. Because she also had COVID and we were past the 10-day quarantine date, they were not too concerned of me giving it to her. So that's good. And then my daughter at the time was 2 years old. So I couldn't see her, unfortunately. But luckily, the fact that she's 2 years old was sort of positive because she didn't really understand what was going on.
What does your wife say about it? Has she told you, like, was she coming and talking in your ear, or what was that like for her? What did she say her side of the experience was like?
I believe she had it worse than me because I was out of it. I don't know what was happening, but she was the one that obviously was concerned to keep the house running, was stressing about me and so forth. But yeah, she came to visit every opportunity that the hospital would allow her to come visit. And she told me that she would speak to me. The doctors told her to just say positive things. She would play music to me from my favorite band. So that's the type of thing she did.
You know Tim's going to want me to ask, what band is that?
I doubt that you'll know the band. It's an Afrikaans band called Spoegwolf. So translated, that would be spitting wolf.
What kind of music's that?
It's, I wouldn't say poppy, but almost like an Afrikaans, let's say Coldplay or U2.
So the cliche people have of comas is, oh my goodness, will they ever wake up? Will they be in this coma forever? Was that your situation, or did they always know they could wake you up when they wanted to because it was induced?
Yeah, no, my situation was they knew that they could wake me up. It's basically just turning down the medication and then I will gradually wake up. The reason why they sedated me is to limit my exertion and movement. So they were looking to get my oxygen and levels and my lung capacity and whatever to a certain level. And from there, they could wake me up.
So you have no memory or awareness of your wife's visits or doctors talking to you or music or anything like that?
Nothing, only after I woke up.
I have dreams most nights. Sometimes I remember them, sometimes I don't. But even the ones I remember, I feel like they escape me very quickly. Like I kind of lose track of what they were and then they're gone. But you seem to still remember the dreams you had in your coma.
Yeah, it was quite vivid. And I honestly believe that what was happening in my mind as a dream was the reality.
But aren't all dreams like that, Wickus?
No, because when I sleep at night, I can clearly distinguish that this is a dream that I'm having while I'm sleeping. And once I wake, then I know that was a dream.
Yeah.
But these dreams, as soon as I opened my eyes, I thought that these things that happened to me during my dreams actually occurred in the real world. So I didn't have a thought that this was dreams. I only later realized that what happened to me in this 2.5 weeks, which I dreamed, wasn't actually reality.
So the reason you know that they aren't reality is just like what you've been told and logic.
Yes.
As far as your memory is concerned, these things still actually happened.
Yeah. But logic dictates that it didn't happen. But it felt as if it was reality. It could have happened, but it didn't happen.
So does that mean these things were quite believable? You weren't talking to like pink unicorns with 3 heads and flying through the clouds and stuff?
No, it could have happened. There's one which was kind of weird, but mostly it could have been a reality.
I don't know how much you want to tell us specifics, and I know some people find it really boring listening to other people's dreams anyway, but just so I've got a better understanding of what you're saying, are these were like everyday scenarios with your loved ones, were they, or friends and things like that? But were extraordinary things happening, or were they just mundane things?
No, it was one of them is, I won't call it mundane, but not out of the ordinary. I'm going to give you 3 examples. And maybe you'll better understand what I mean by the reality with the examples. And the first one, I tell with the permission of my wife. She knows about this. But for some odd reason, while I was in the coma, I believed that we were divorced and that I had married another woman. So what was interesting, and luckily I couldn't speak due to the pipe down my throat, because she walked into the room, was the first memory after I was awoken that I can clearly remember. And all that was going through my head was, why are you here when I'm married to another lady?
Right.
So good thing I couldn't talk at the time.
Oh, okay. So you still had the pipe. You couldn't say, who are you? And
Yeah.
Okay. And so if you couldn't talk to your real wife when she'd walked back in and you were awake, so you couldn't say to her, hang on, you're my ex, how did you figure out and come to the realization that she was still your wife and you had just dreamt this other scenario? How did you figure that out?
Yeah, it was a couple of minutes of confusion on my side. But when she started talking to me, started talking about the experience, what she has gone through, her mother that came to live with us for the 6 weeks or whatever.
Yeah.
Then I started to realize that something's not adding up here. And that's when I realized that this other wife of mine is probably not real.
Okay, so you just figured it out based on
Yeah.
your wife just being herself.
Yes. Then the other dream that I had is for some odd reason, I had to identify a gangster. Cape Town has a lot of gangsterism, so I had to identify a gangster in a lineup, but for some reason the police had us outside and the people could actually see me. It was like a lineup of people. I can't remember any context why the police needed me to identify this person, but I identified him, and as soon as I identified him, he took out a gun and shot me in the throat. So I woke up with a pipe in my throat, and I was confused why I'm in the hospital, because I'm thinking it's probably because I got shot. But then my wife also again spoke about COVID and so on, and then I figured out, okay, I'm probably still in hospital due to COVID.
Wickus, do you think that perhaps the pain and the intrusion of them doing that to your throat gave you the dream? Because quite often when we're dreaming, if something happens in the room, it can become incorporated into our dream. Is that what you think happened here?
I do believe so. I did have some therapy sessions after my COVID experience, and the therapist also thinks that that specific dream could have been at the time where they were cutting open my throat to put in the pipe.
Okay, Wickus, what's the third one?
All right, so the third one is the one that I thought was reality for a couple of days after I was awoken. So after I've been shot, I was taken to hospital in my dream, and they informed me that I had to get plastic surgery for whatever reason. So I dreamed that this doctor told me about, and this is the bit of a weird one. So the doctor told me that I need to get plastic surgery, but they've got this new technique they're going to test out. You lie on a special bed, you get absorbed by the bed, and then you just need to think of how you want to look, and you'll morph into that thing.
Yeah.
Long story short, I thought I got that weird type of plastic surgery then I could see all these blobs around me. I'm guessing also people getting plastic surgery. But the funny thing is, after I was awoken, perhaps 2 or 3 days after that, I still believed that I had plastic surgery. And the person in my dream I saw as the doctor or the plastic surgeon had a similar face to one of the physiotherapists that was giving me physiotherapy. And again, a good thing I couldn't talk, because I wanted to ask the physiotherapist how my plastic surgery went. So...
Do you remember what you chose to look like when you went into the morphing bed?
I don't know why, but for some reason I chose Will Smith.
Will Smith?
They were actually in the dream showing me pictures of different celebrities, and I chose Will Smith.
Okay, for people who don't know, I'm looking at Wickus right in the face right now, and he's very much a white man.
I am.
Okay. I have to ask, because I'm so intrigued. Does your wife give you a hard time now about your alternative wife? Is this a constant teasing point for you? Because this seems like it's a memory for you. Like you've got this alternative wife in your memory.
Luckily not.
Okay. She's very comfortable with it.
Yeah, she's got a lot of other things that bothers her about me.
Does she wish you looked more like Will Smith?
I hope not.
All right. So you just live with these now as memories that you just have to keep telling yourself aren't memories. It's not like a dream. They're like proper vivid memories in your memory bank.
Yes.
Are they more vivid than other memories?
Definitely.
Yeah?
Like I can remember my dreams during my coma better than I can remember some of my memories from, let's say, primary school or even high school. So
amazing. That's amazing. How long were you in this coma for?
All right, so I was sedated or in the coma for 2.5 weeks, but I was a total of 6 weeks in hospital.
Okay, 2.5 under the hardcore. I have to say, Wickus, like I've said many times that hearing other people's dreams is quite a boring thing. And the other day I had these dreams that I told my wife about, and just halfway through telling her, I'm like, I can't believe I've done this. This is so boring. Even I'm bored telling it. But listening to you tell those did feel different. And maybe it's because you tell them with a vividness that is more legitimate. But that didn't, like, I didn't, listening to you tell them, I didn't think, oh, God, here we go. He's about to turn into a fairy and something. Like, it sounded like it was interesting to hear you tell them.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, okay. There you go. You think it could be a good podcast talking to people who've been in comas? I thought it was a good idea for a podcast. I still think it's a good idea for a podcast after talking to you about it. So
that's good.
Maybe you need to make this podcast. Maybe you're the man to make it.
Perhaps. I just need to find the people.
All right. Yeah, well, I'm sure that can be done.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question? This is me just being a total nosy journalist now.
You may.
The alternative person you married, is that a real person that you know?
No. It's an imaginary person.
Oh, good. It wasn't like your wife's sister or something.
No, luckily not.
Because that would be tricky. It's not someone you have to bump into at the shops and keep saying, I am not married to that person. I am not married to that person.
Yeah.
That makes me feel more relaxed.
Makes me even much more relaxed knowing that it's an imaginary person.
Okay. Look at that.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Wickus. Yeah, that's fascinating.
Not Wickus.
It doesn't answer the question, though, that we had around people who are not in induced comas, what their consciousness and level of consciousness is. But it was fascinating to hear some of the things that went through his mind, so to speak, in his experience. Yeah.
He says he had no consciousness, no awareness of anything in the room, people. Whether he was taking it in kind of unconsciously and it was feeding into his dreams. That does seem like it was the case.
Yeah.
Given the shooting story in the throat and the tracheotomy. But yeah.
I wonder what prompted the divorce thing, though. That was interesting.
Man, are you picking at a thread there?
No.
Problems?
No, but I'm saying, you know what I mean? Like nurse and a doctor having a conversation in the room about someone who got divorced, and you know how dreams can go. You run with a word and hear something. I wasn't alluding to anything else, and I'm sure that they've talked it over comprehensively. But that is fascinating. Yeah.
Thanks, Wickus.
That was cool. Yeah.
I find comas fascinating. I think there's something in it. I think there's a podcast there.
Help me then. Do you know, like, technically, what is a coma? Like, you're not asleep, and you're not. You are. It's not the same as being under anaesthetic, is it? Like, is it a different non-consciousness?
Should we look it up? Should we look it up on Wikipedia?
Wikipedia.
Wikipedia. A coma is a deep state of prolonged unconsciousness in which a person cannot be awakened, fails to respond normally to painful stimuli, light or sound, lacks a normal wake sleep cycle, and does not initiate voluntary actions.
Okay. Yeah, right. So the sleep cycle's not happening. It's just permanent or longer than the sleep cycle. But it's not a particular state. It's not like, there are 3 categories. You're under anaesthetic and I guess it's a natural anaesthetic. That's what's happening. You're in the state as if you are, you're unconscious.
Comas can be the result of natural causes or can be medically induced. Clinically, a coma can be defined as the consistent inability to follow a one-step command.
Oh, okay.
It can also be defined as having a score of 8 or less on the Glasgow Coma Scale for at least 6 hours. Wow. We're opening a can of worms here.
Here we are.
The Glasgow Coma Scale. Shall we look? The Glasgow Coma Scale is a clinical scale used to reliably measure a person's level of consciousness after brain injury.
Oh, okay.
And we've got all sorts of numbers and things like, does not open eyes, opens eyes in response to pain, opens eyes in response to voice, all this sort of stuff. And there's all these numbers.
Well, that's right, because some people can be in a coma with their eyes open, can't they? Like they're looking around the room and not responding. But look, my evidence for that is sketching back to a documentary I watched in late primary school or very early high school. So that's a long time ago. Pre-Achy Breaky Heart.
Pre-Achy Breaky Heart. Everything centres around that date. All right. We have got a team in England this week. I've put one together. I thought we might do that like at the end of the show. Shall we? So we can actually get some podcast ideas rolling?
Oh, are you talking to me or are you talking like on the show talking?
Yeah. Well, both. Me talking to you is what the show is, man. You do realise that, don't you? You know these conversations we have every few weeks. I publish these on the internet.
What?
There's a whole podcast there.
I just thought we caught up.
I've been making a fortune behind your back, man.
Incredible.
I've got this friend called Brady who just mid-conversation keeps talking about Patreon. It's a bit weird.
Yeah, play it. Look, play that at the end. Which one is it? The C.S. Lewis one?
Yeah.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis.
Yeah.
C.S. Lewis
That's
one,
cool.
where we go to his
That's
grave.
nice. That's nice.
Yeah.
Let's do that at the end. Yeah, I enjoy that.
We'll do that at the end.
Nice. Something to look forward
All
to.
right. Let's do a few ideas. We can't do too many ideas.
So these are listener ideas today again, aren't they? All right.
Yeah, these were submitted mostly by Patreon supporters. Go to patreon.com/unmadefm. That is where I will ask for ideas and take submissions. Don't just send them on spec. It's kind of a perk for patrons to be able to have their ideas read out on the show. It's one of the many perks of being a Patreon supporter. Tyler wrote me quite a long email. My name's Tyler. He's from Utah. Grew up in Washington State. His wife is Maria. I haven't convinced her to listen to the podcast, but she appreciates when I tell her about funny stories and knows if I suddenly burst out laughing, this is probably what I'm listening to. Are you listening to the Aussies again? She will ask. He's had a few ideas. One of them was impersonations. The idea of this podcast is that you would have hosts who every episode would impersonate a famous person or fictional character and play that role throughout the whole podcast. The fun of this would be that you could have really interesting combinations of people discussing topics. One host could impersonate Barack Obama while the other impersonates Yoda. Then you could have Obama and Yoda discussing foreign policy strategies. Or perhaps another episode features Tom Hanks and Severus Snape describing their favourite vacation locations. A surefire winner would be to ask Tim to impersonate Donald Duck every week. Go on, give us a bit of Donald Duck. That is a skill. Have you ever done that from the pulpit?
No.
Oh,
What
you should.
What context would that be helpful?
I've seen you shoehorn some pretty obscure stuff into your sermons. If you can't get that in.
But Donald, here are a few impressions, folks, before we get down to business.
You shoehorn the moon landing into the service I came to, which was pretty gratuitous.
Nice, yes. But that had a point. I would imagine trying to do a whole sermon in Donald Duck's voice. The trouble with my Donald Duck impression is, while it sounds impressive, you can't actually understand what I'm saying. I can't use it for...
So you are saying things. Okay, say something. Just really try to say something to me, and I'll see if I can...
No, I can't do it. That was hello, Brady. You have to skew your voice, your mouth into such a position that it's very hard to enunciate just about anything at all. I don't know how Donald Duck does it.
Another idea from Tyler. Local news. Each podcast episode details an interesting story from around the world that no one else will ever hear about because it's considered local news. A service project done by the local high school. Success stories from a rescue shelter. Drama in the upcoming school board election. The club tennis champion suffers a catastrophic defeat to a newcomer. The host could interview people involved and treat it as if it was a national story. I quite like this. This really appeals. Obviously, this would appeal to me, journalist. We do a bit. I mean, the Unmade podcast isn't a million miles from this sometimes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you're jumping off. No, that's good. Nice idea. Maybe I should give them a score. Donald Duck should give them a score, and you can tell me what the score is out of 10.
All right. What was that? I don't know.
Hang on. I need to practice. Hang on. There we go.
Let's move on. There was more from Tyler, but we can't let him hog the whole episode. Wickus has already done that. So Rick the Nick. This idea feels like low-hanging fruit, but it's been bouncing around in my head for a while now, and I'd love to share. I actually don't know what this idea is yet because I haven't turned the page. Hang on. There's so many hobbies that look like they'd be a ton of fun and seem to have a passionate community of enthusiasts, but it can feel really difficult and often overwhelming to figure out how to get into them, even if you're brand new. My idea for a podcast is called How to Get Into. As I envisage it, it would have a host interviewing an enthusiast of a different hobby each episode and asking them how exactly a raw beginner can get into this hobby.
Look, this is a good idea, but I think there is a little bit of this around already.
Yeah.
I like it when they give an overview of a particular musical artist or an author and they say, look, start here, start with this book or song or album and go from here. So I think there is a little bit of this around.
What's a hobby you'd like to get into?
Well, I've gotten, over the last couple of years, into 2 hobbies that I really wanted to get into. Surfing was one, and that was just getting past that sense of, well, this is not something I do or could do, and realise, well, of course it is. You can learn to do anything. The other one's playing tennis, which I kind of got shoehorned into to play you, and then I've really, really loved it. But you suddenly realise, well, I can learn this. You know, there's plenty of stuff on YouTube, and I can go and get lessons, and, you know, you can get better and practice.
Yeah.
There's sort of, there is a funny way of realising, hang on, you can kind of learn to do most things. You just have to start somewhere. So
I don't want to get into this particularly, but I was at the park the other day and there's like this big lake and these guys were having remote control boat races with like these like sailing boats.
Oh yeah.
But it was really like a proper sailing race with like markers and following all the rules. And there must have been like 20 of the boats and they're all on the side of the water talking to each other and there's like an umpire and they're talking about who has right of way. And so it was like proper rules of sailing, but with these remote control boats. And the boats were really elaborate, and I was thinking, those guys are really into that.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember a similar thing with remote control planes. I had a brother-in-law who was very much into that, and I went along one day when we were there on holidays and was watching his little, crew guys, and they were spending an enormous amount of time hovering over the plane, only to walk out, put it up in the air, fly, land it again. That was about 4 minutes. Then another half an hour spent hovering over it with, like screwdrivers and stuff. And I'm like, this doesn't feel like it's worth it. But of course, they're loving that bit as well, the fixing it up and getting it right bit.
Oh, yeah. It's a real genre of YouTube videos and Instagram videos, watching people who've spent years and years making really, really elaborate remote control planes and crashing them on the first flight, like on takeoff. 2 years making this perfect replica of an A380 and then it just like dive bombs straight away on takeoff and smashes into 1,000 pieces.
Oh dear.
Leon says, my idea for a podcast is making it look easy. The point is to interview people who have a seemingly easy job and let them explain why it isn't as simple as it seems and what hidden complexities there are. I'd like to hear what it takes to master being a painter, a hairdresser, or a Zamboni driver. I'm fascinated by people who can do things that you've got to like get right the first time, like painting lines on the road and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
People who can do that well and accurately and stuff like... Because I'd be rubbish at that.
There are some things you can build up to, and then there are some things you have to do it perfect. Like, you need to practice somewhere else, but when you get out there. Like, there's different types of music. They say this with jazz. Like, jazz music, you go out, you make a little noise, you make a little bit more noise, and you kind of build up and over half an hour, and then suddenly you're really into it. But there are other things where you've got to hit it from the first bar. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to go out and... Like dancing, you can't build up to dancing. You're suddenly out there doing it, or drawing something publicly, like a circle on a wall. Or
this idea is a bit out there, but it kind of appeals to me. So I'll give it a try, but it is a bit weird. It comes from Leo from Toronto. And by the way, shout out to Leo from Toronto. He keeps a spreadsheet of every idea and everything we've discussed on the podcast. If you've never seen it, I'll try to remember to link to it in the notes. So you can go through every episode we've ever done, who had what ideas, what else we discussed. It's actually a really handy resource for me sometimes to make sure we're not duplicating.
Yes, I need that link. I always lose where that link is.
Yes. So shout out to you, Leo. You're a great friend of the podcast. Here's the idea you sent in. One thing I do from time to time is geocaching. This is essentially a treasure hunt to find a cache using GPS coordinates. Sometimes there's a puzzle associated with the geocache where you have to go to the poster coordinates, answer a few questions, add them onto the coordinates to get the actual location. Based on this, my idea is called podcaching. Instead of a typical geocache, an initial podcast is released, giving starting coordinates and the questions. When a person gets to the podcache, they get a special episode only for successful podcachers. This episode could be about the area they are in or something completely different, or maybe even another secret podcache. I don't know if this is a great idea, but it's an idea.
It is an idea. Yeah. This would appeal to you as well. You like this idea.
Reading it back now, I realise that Leo's idea is like quite physical, like you go to the places and then you'll listen to a podcast about the place. I thought the idea was, and an idea I quite like the idea of, is the podcast just exist on the internet. But to listen to them, you need a specific URL that has a code in it or a number in it, and you can only get that URL if you solve the puzzle.
Oh, okay.
So to listen to the next episode, you need to solve this, and then the URL will work. And so I was thinking of it as a completely virtual experience, but Leo's making it a physical experience, which I also think is a very good idea. Very good fun.
That virtual idea, I wonder if that's been done before. That seems very clever.
YouTubers do it sometimes. Like when YouTube was a bit newer, especially, and we all just wanted to do something different. Everyone was like coming up with choose your own adventures of YouTube videos, and you couldn't get to the next video without certain information and stuff.
Oh, okay. Do they not do that anymore? Is it an old idea? That seems brilliant.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, probably people who are newer to do it thinking it's a new idea.
Right, yeah.
But, when you're old and cynical and jaded like me, you don't do new ideas anymore.
Back in my day when we were on YouTube, that's right.
Oh, I quite like this one. This comes from, is it from I-L, or have I not copied the name properly? I don't know. Anyway, whoever it is, they have an idea. A double misnomer is a compound noun or noun phrase with two components where neither of the components is a descriptor of what it denotes. For example, sweetbread is not sweet nor a bread. It's cooked thymus or pancreas. Sea monkey does not live in the sea, nor is it a monkey. It's brine shrimp. Panda ant is not a panda or an ant. It's a wasp. A guinea pig is not a native to Guinea, nor is it a pig. It's a South American rodent. Each podcast has a title of the double misnomer, and the main host asks the guest to guess what it means and how it got the name. The history bit can be convoluted and quite fun. At the end of the podcast, new names that are not a misnomer are suggested and put to a vote by the listeners. One by one, we clean up the language and evolve it to make more sense.
Solid idea.
Good idea.
Solid, sensible, clever, educative idea.
I'm going to look up here if there's a list of double misnomers, because I forgot to do this. Double misnomer. Steamroller, tinfoil, clothes iron.
Oh, yeah, steamroller.
Blackboards that are frequently not black. Sticks of chalk, not made of chalk, they're made of gypsum. So these are things that the names are wrong, like lead pencils.
Yeah.
Woods in golf that are rarely made of wood these days.
That's a bit different, isn't it? Where it's evolved.
A horned toad is a lizard. French horns originated in Germany. Chinese checkers is not from China. These are kind of not quite there, but tennis elbow doesn't necessarily come from playing tennis. They're kind of like halfway there. I don't know if there'll be enough of these to keep it going, but I like the idea. And that's all that matters on the Unmade podcast.
Indeed,
the idea.
That's right. Yeah. The spirit of it being unmade. The whole time we're talking now, I've still got that image here on the screen of the Margarine laptop. Is it a laptop or an iPad? I think it's a laptop.
It's a laptop. Yeah.
And it's like a piece of modern art. I actually think you should keep it. That's fantastic.
It's probably gone by now. Mo from Panama. From Panama. I'm just reading this because they're from Panama.
Yeah.
Who knew we had a listener in Panama?
Wow.
I'm a fan from the early days. I'm here to share my idea for a podcast. It's called Why Would You Know That? Guests would come on to discuss the surreptitious and sometimes unbelievable way we have of learning certain things. For example, during the height of the sofa shop fever on Unmade, I've never heard it called sofa shop fever, I often and excitedly shared some of the covers and sofa shop fun with my daughter, and we would have a good laugh. My daughter is not a native English speaker, has never been to Australia, much less Adelaide, and yet is quite familiar with the advertising jingle of a now defunct furniture store that operated 15,000 kilometres away, 20 plus years before she was born. Why would she know that?
Yeah, that's great.
That is a good idea. That is a good idea. People who have an expertise or a knowledge in something for some unusual reason.
Yeah, it doesn't fit with their brand or their vocation. It's just a random bit of knowledge they pull out. Yeah.
I mean, quite often it would be, because I had a friend who knew a lot about it or was into it. But hopefully you could take it a little bit further than that and tell the story and how you've used that expertise since.
Yeah, no, I like this idea.
A friend of ours, actually, went out with a girl whose brother was deaf for a very long time, and as a result of it, he just picked up a lot of sign language. And it was really fun. Sometimes we would be somewhere and there would be people using sign language, and he'd just go up and, throw in a few signs there, have a little conversation with them. And I was like, how on earth do you know sign language, man? And he was like, so-and-so's brother was deaf and I learnt it then. So, how do you know that? Because of this.
Yeah.
Here's an idea from Neil in Texas. I like this one. A podcast on the history of cups and trophies, especially in sport. What is the history of the Vince Lombardi Trophy in American football? What about the Ashes urn, the old mug in sailing? Each one could be an episode. Interesting topics might be who designed it, why was it designed in this way, any controversy surrounding the trophy, any famous winning streaks or notable upsets in the history of the competition for the trophy, who is the keeper of the cup during the competition. Interview some famous holders of the trophy. A working title might be Going for the Gold or Chronicles of the Cup.
Yeah, or just histories of the trophies. I think this is a really interesting idea.
Yeah.
This is something that I definitely Wikipedia'd over the years to find out, and is really interesting. The different trophies, some of them you take home, and some of them you just get your name on, and it's kept at a particular place. Fascinating.
Yeah. So the Stanley Cup, which goes to the winner of the NHL, Tim and I always call it ice hockey, which makes Americans upset. They think we should just call it hockey. But the National Hockey League in America and Canada have this trophy called the Stanley Cup, and it's famously very, very big. If you haven't seen it before,
I have. Yeah,
it's like it's huge,
bigger than one of their shirts. Yeah,
it's massive, and so. There's a tradition with that, I believe, that if your team wins it, you get a day with the cup. You can do what you want with it for a day. And a friend of mine was in Los Angeles, I believe. They were at a car park at that famous observatory that overlooks LA. Like it's a really scenic location. And they were there, I think, just taking some pictures or hanging out there. And suddenly this van pulled up and this guy got out. And he got out with the Stanley Cup, and he was like one of the winning players, and it was his day with the cup, and he wanted to take a picture at this scenic lookout, looking over Los Angeles with it. So he was just there taking some pictures, and suddenly the Stanley Cup was there, and it was this guy's day, and he was just taking it around, taking photos and doing his thing, taking some selfies, and he was probably with other people, but yeah. There you go.
Oh, that's nice. I remember when in the Australian rules football we have the Premiership Cup, although it's a different one every year, so you get to have it and take it back to your club.
Yeah.
But when Richmond won it, it was for the first time in a long time, 30 years or so, 35 years or so, 40 years. And they did all these wonderful things. It's not just like, we had a party and there it was and it went back to the club. But it then went on tour around the country. And so people that were supporters in different states could go along to a place and see the cup or touch the cup.
Yeah.
And then they started doing all this cool other stuff, like taking it to particular supporters who were chronically ill in hospital, and they just got to, you know what I mean? It started doing all these really interesting tours. And I think that's fantastic because so often it would have just maybe gone to a sponsor or gone back to the club. But I love the idea it was on the move and all these people got to touch it and hold it. And it would go to great lengths to visit individual little children, Did
you go and do it? Have you held the AFL Premiership Cup?
No, I haven't, no. I remember you did the Adelaide Crows one, didn't you? Yeah, I remember you bragging about that.
So the Adelaide Crows won it one year, and I was as a journalist, I was covering the big celebration parade in Adelaide, which finished at the town hall. And I was in the town hall on the balcony, and someone had just put it down, had put the cup down. And I was like, I'll have a picture with it. So I picked it up and had my picture taken, just holding the cup, I remember I had a few prints made of it, to take home by the photography department so I could have copies of the photos. That was when we actually printed out photos and kept copies back in those days. And I remember it well because I remember I had a couple of copies of it sitting at home. And one day there was this knock on the door, on my front door. I'd just seen my girlfriend off in the street. I'd gone to see her to her car. She'd driven off, and I went back into the house. And while we were in the street, when I was seeing her off, there were these two boys kicking a football, just having a game amongst themselves. And I went back in the house. There was a knock on the door. I opened the door, and one of the little boys was there, holding his football, looking up at me wide-eyed. And I said, yes? And he said, "Are you Peter Vardy?" Who was a player for the Crows, who he thought I obviously bore some resemblance to. He goes, "Are you Peter Vardy?" And I was so taken aback, I just went, "No." And then this other voice around the corner started laughing and ran away. So obviously one of them had thought I was, and the other one said I wasn't. And he was sent as the sacrificial lamb and got embarrassed. But to this day, I wish I'd said, "Why, yes, I am," and leaned over and pulled out a photo of me holding the Premiership Cup and said, "Would you like a picture of me with the cup?" But I didn't think of it. Have you held any? Well, I've also held the European Cup.
Oh, right. Is it just one of those, is there?
Now the Champions League. That's one where you get one you keep. So Nottingham Forest won that many years ago, and I was at an event celebrating the anniversary of Nottingham Forest winning the cup, and all the old retired players were there, and the cup was being handed around. So I held that and took my picture with that one as well. I think they're the only famous trophies I've held. I stood next to the Cricket World Cup at a Cricket World Cup match, but you weren't allowed to touch it.
Right, yeah. I don't think I have either. What about an Olympic gold medal? Have you held an Olympic gold medal? They're pretty common, I guess.
Yeah, well, I've held Eric Liddell's Olympic gold medal.
Oh,
I made a video about it.
Yeah, wow, there you go.
I've held lots of Nobel Prizes. Yeah, I've held lots of those sort of things because of objectivity. I get to hold and touch lots of cool stuff.
Yeah, yeah. The Vince Lombardi one, that's the American football one.
NFL.
Is there just one of those? Oh, I've seen them in other clubs.
I think you keep them. You get one to keep, I think, of that.
That looks like a chunky affair, that is.
Yeah, I think that's a really disappointingly simple trophy. It's become iconic because we see it so much. It's an iconic trophy, but I always think it's a bit of a disappointing trophy.
What about the one last one, the Soccer World Cup? What's the deal with that? Do you get one of those, or does your name go on it?
I don't know if you get a replica to keep. I think you probably do, but there is a perpetual one that you give back every 4 years. Because famously, the trophy they used to have for the World Cup. There we go. We're starting this podcast now because I know a bit about this. It was called the Jules Rimet Trophy, and it was quite a simple-looking trophy. It kind of looked a bit like an angel with wings, and you would win that if you won the World Cup. And when England hosted the World Cup in 1966, before they won it, they ended up winning it that year, but when they were hosting it before the tournament, it was on display and it got stolen. And no one knew where it was, and it was this huge national story. The World Cup's been stolen. The Jules Rimet trophy's been stolen. And it was later found in a park, hidden under some newspapers by a dog called Pickles. And that dog called Pickles became a massive celebrity in the UK because it found the Jules Rimet trophy. England won it that year, so they got it for 4 years. The next World Cup in 1970, Brazil won the World Cup, and that was the third time they'd won it, and they were the first team to win it 3 times. And as their reward for winning it, because they wanted a new trophy, Brazil were given the trophy to keep permanently. And then they cast the new World Cup trophy, which is the one you're probably more familiar with the globe of the earth being held by the women or the angels or whatever they are. So the Jules Rimet trophy, the original World Cup, was in Brazil permanently until it got stolen again. And this time, I think they believe it was melted down for the gold. Oh, right. So the original World Cup trophy, the Jules Rimet trophy, is gone.
We have a trophy at work for our footy tipping competition. And it's been going for more than a decade, and it's a little bit controversial actually. Like it's a proper trophy, like it's got like a little like a Smartie man, or M&Ms, like a little M&M man on top, and big smiley face. But it's got all names proper written there of the people that win the footy tipping competition.
Are they engraved on metal, or are they written with like a marker?
Yeah, no, proper engraved and so forth. Unfortunately, we started the footy tipping in, I think it was 2013, and we had like a pretty crappy wooden trophy for a couple of years until someone went out to a trophy shop and just bought a trophy, which is I remember as a kid seeing a trophy shop and just thinking that was unbelievable, because I thought trophies come from heaven or somewhere, but to realise you could just go out and buy a trophy for $40 is, you know what I mean? Like unbelievable. Yeah. But anyway, someone bought this trophy and brought it to work, and they went to the trouble of going back and having all the winners engraved from the very top of the engraving thing all the way down, and they started in 2014, missing my inaugural victory in 2013. So very famously, all the winners are down the list except for the very first one, which was me. My name's not on the trophy. And that gets brought up every year we have
That needs to be fixed.
I don't know how to. We have to put something on the back or something. We don't know how it's going to be done, but it clearly has to be done. I'm campaigning for it. No one else is campaigning for it. No one else cares.
The winners of the World Cup have their name engraved on the trophy, and it's engraved on the bottom. This is the Football World Cup again. When I say
right.
the World Cup,
Yeah.
They're engraved on the bottom, which I always find quite weird. Like it's I think you've got to actually hold it and tip it upside down to see who's won it. Like,
Surely you can't lift it up too often. It's not like it's very easily accessible. We go out for a special breakfast to celebrate every year after the end of the football season, and the previous winner makes a speech and hands it to the new winner. And then invariably I weave into the conversation that there's a name missing on the trophy.
I think we've kind of run out of time. I've still got a few more ideas here on my list, but from Patreon supporters. But I think we've run out of time because we're going to throw to Tim in England to end the show with a visit to C.S. Lewis's grave, and we will then also be recording a request room for Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/UnmadeFM. If you want to listen to these extra bits of episode we do, we've had lots of requests and questions sent in that we'll deal with. We might also reflect on the C.S. Lewis grave visit in the request room if Tim's got anything else to say, but it stands alone, this visit. It's pretty self-explanatory.
It's a special time. Thank you, everyone, for sending in your ideas. Some very strong ideas there. I still don't know if there's been other very strong ideas that have not been brought up on this episode or the last episode, but have made their way onto Brady's list for future episodes. Who knows?
Possibly.
But you will know.
No, I would.
Brady will know in his heart,
Yes.
and you will know as a stakeholder. So thank you very much for sending in your contributions. Do let me know if you hear your idea coming up later out of Brady's mouth.
Okay, let's do it. Tim in England.
Tim in England.
So, by coincidence, our travels have brought us sort of around the outskirts of Oxford on our way to London, right next to the Holy Trinity Church where C.S. Lewis is buried. Tim has been here before. I've actually been here before, but we've come here together to the cemetery outside the church for a pilgrimage. What's this like, Tim? Is this bringing back some memories? We're about to go through the gate into the cemetery here.
Oh, this is exciting. I first came here many years ago, nearly 20 years ago. Not much has changed, but it's a wonderful pleasure to come back. I mean, this is like going to the Colonel's grave, really. Maybe even slightly more important.
Paint the picture, man. Tell people what you're saying.
Okay, so if you can imagine sort of, a very small old English church with the graveyard around about it, that's exactly what this is. There's a lovely green grass, there's a lovely church of a sort of small, it's bigger than being quaint, but it's not like a cathedral or anything like that. But it's obviously a couple hundred years old at least, and it's surrounded by graves, of course, because people used to be buried in the churchyard of the church they attended.
Do you remember where C.S. Lewis's grave is?
I do feel...
Yeah, you're right. It's this way.
Over this way somewhere.
Yeah, it is. I remember it being this way. Not exactly sure where, but...
The funeral was a while ago, but I think it was over this way. Yeah. It's under a tree, somewhere quite nondescript.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly where it was. We're walking amongst the gravestones now, looking for it.
There's not a gravestone that's vertical. It's just on the ground.
Lays down, does it? We'll see a prize for who can find it first.
Ooh, I'm going to walk over in this direction. There are some reasonably new graves here as well. It's not just, but there are some ones that go back very far indeed. I'm going to look here actually. I wonder if this is it. Yes, here we are.
Tim's found it.
I felt drawn to it like a magnet. And there's a little series of wildflowers that are on there. So someone else has come to pay homage.
Yeah, just a tiny little, I wouldn't call it a bouquet, just a little, there we go. Oh. And it says, in loving memory of my brother, Clive Staples Lewis, born Belfast, 29 November 1898, died in this parish, 22nd November 1963, famous date. Men must endure their going hence.
The famous date, of course, is because it's the same day that JFK was shot and that Aldous Huxley died as well, the three of them.
Who was Warren Hamilton Lewis, who's also buried here?
That's his older brother.
Okay.
Who outlived him, as you can see. Yeah, Warnie, actually. His nickname was, Warren's name was Warnie.
That's right. Nice.
Hello there. Hey, you know C.S. Lewis?
You knew him, or?
I wish.
Yeah.
Come over, it's marvellous. Is this the first time you've been here?
Yes.
Isn't it marvellous? What a thrill. Yeah.
Is the church open at the moment? Do you know? Did you go in the church?
Yeah,
The fellow
they
that
did say
just
it
walked
was.
past us said it is.
Okay.
Well, let's go have a look at the church while you
Yeah.
have some private
Yeah.
time here. Yeah. One of the cool things about the church is we know where C.S. Lewis and his brother used to sit. And in fact, because they had a famous place to sit where they sat each time, there's a window next to their seat which has been made. You know how they have stained glass windows in these churches? It's been crafted in honour of him.
Okay.
So let's come and have a look.
We're walking into the church now. Like so many English churches, it's just open and unlocked. Anyone can walk in, which we just have.
Oh no, there's work being done over there.
There's some work being done here.
So we can't see the stained glass.
There's a whole bunch of like sort of wood panelling covering a whole left-hand side of the church, which is cover the window. It looks like they've put a picture of it on the wall though, to compensate for people who don't get to see it. Is that it?
It's either this one or that one. It's right behind the pillar. There is a plaque.
See, there's that picture on the wall.
Oh
of the
yeah,
window?
yeah. Come and have a look down here.
Yeah, it's on his seat. There's a little...
Where is it? We're looking around.
So that stained glass window that Tim spoke about, although we can't see it, they've printed out a picture of it and put it on the wood panelling so that people who are missing out can see what they could have seen. It's got Narnia, sort of Narnia scape on it. Yeah, where is that plaque saying C.S. Lewis used to sit here?
Maybe it's on the other side of that
Or is
thing.
it the next?
Maybe it
pillar
is the
back?
one. I thought it was further back because he was famously always late for church. He'd slip in up the back and then leave very quickly.
Okay.
Get down the pub.
Oh, here it is. Here it is.
Ah, there we go.
It says a little. I'll take a picture so people can see in the show notes. But there's a little plaque, and it says, "Here sat and worshipped Clive Staples Lewis, 1898 to 1963." Do you want to sit there, Tim? Why don't you sit there for a picture?
Sure, I'll go around there.
So Tim's going to go and sit in C.S. Lewis's seat.
Maybe take it from there so that you get stone rather than wood.
Not like Tim to be all directing the photos. This
Come
is
on now.
amazing. I'll try and get that ugly sound equipment out. There we go. There's Tim in C.S. Lewis's old church seat.
Fantastic. So it's not often we're in a church together, Brady.
Reasonably often.
Marvellous. Well, I guess so, that's true.
I come to your church all the time. Yeah, the church is in a bit of a state of, looks like renovation. So it's not as pretty as it was last time I was here, but
Hopefully it's going to be prettier after the renovation.
yeah.
It is very old.
Nice one.
Well, the porch gates were given in memory of someone in 1992. So, ooh, God. So that's going back quite a way.
And this cross here, Tim, with all the post-it notes on it.
Yeah.
Is that the actual cross that Jesus was crucified on?
They made two and used one, and this is the other one. They didn't have the post-it notes on them. Except there was one post-it note at the top that said the King of the Jews.
The original's in a Hard Rock Cafe. What a lovely little cemetery.
It's pretty good. I mean, do you like the idea of being buried in a churchyard like this?
Oh yeah, churchyard. Yeah, I don't. I think I'm more a cremation kind of guy.
I think most people are these days.
You're not though, are you?
No, I like the idea. Of course, there are some ecological questions about burial and all that kind of stuff.
There's no cemetery at your church, is there?
No. We do have a memorial garden out the back where people who have been cremated have their ashes placed in the urn, placed in a behind a plaque. So that's pretty nice.
I know you've had pictures here before. Do you want any more pictures while you're here, or you?
Yeah, I'll get one. I'll recreate one, which I think.
All right.
I think it was something like this when I was.
Sort of squatting man in a manly fashion. Okay, there's one. Let me do one more. And let's do a... Can you do a selfie at C.S. Lewis's grave? It feels a little bit wrong.
Nah, do it. That's right.
We have to look sufficiently somber.
Can you get the name? Is the name in there?
I think the name's there. Let's
Just
try
at
it again.
Three lines down from the cross.
You move that hand. You move. Yeah, and maybe put your hands there.
No, I'll put them in my
Yeah,
pocket
that's
anyway.
better. It's hard to know what face to pull.
We're not doing a thumbs up.
It's hard to know what face to pull at someone's grave, and like this is like but we're doing this from a place of respect.
The first time I came here, I said a prayer. And it's a funny thing. I'm not praying. You're not praying, to him or anything like that. I just said a prayer to God, and you know what I said? I was just so grateful. That's what I feel. I feel so grateful to C.S. Lewis for his thoughts, his books. They're just incredibly helpful for my life. and my faith. So I just feel so grateful. So I said, thank you, God, for this guy. Good guy.
All right.
And his brother, who took good care of him and was kind of his administrator, you know, doing a lot of work around the place. Difficult, you know, he was pretty, he had some challenges with the bottle and a few other sorts of challenges, but they stuck together. Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, man, for coming here.
That's all right. That was good. It's a lovely place to visit.
That's a nice shot of the church from this angle.
I wonder if I can get one of his grave in the church in it. Could put it all in a bit of context. There we go, that's better. Come a bit closer to me, man, so your shadow's not...
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's good. And if you now walk that way along that path, like towards the church, I'll get one with you walking in it. Got it. That's a lovely, lovely, lovely. Do you like visiting graves? Do you feel like what? Like I do too. Like I find them something quite magical about it. What does it make you feel?
It's a wonderful sense of perspective. Like if you're struggling with something, you know, the minutiae of life in the day, a pressing concern, something's got to happen, whether it's traffic or this or that. Going for a walk is one thing, really good. Going for a walk in a cemetery is brilliant. Just pulls you right back and gives you perspective on things and what's important.
What about visiting the grave of someone famous like C.S. Lewis or JFK or these graves that or Jim Morrison, graves that people like to visit? What does that make? Why do you do that? What do you take from that?
I don't do that a lot. I don't go to venerate. This is probably the only one. Like I don't go to my father's grave very often. I think I've been 3 times in 12 years, and that's to take, mum and show my daughter. So there's nothing about the place. I guess because C.S. Lewis died so many years ago, you got to go somewhere. So I went to his house, and here, out of interest, I don't know, it's a little bit like going to the recording studio where your favourite album's made. It's a little bit like that, except it's more solemn. But so I don't have I didn't bring flowers or venerate, but you've got to take your grief somewhere, and so it's a way of giving symbolic, voice to that for people, which can be really important.
I like it. I find it quite, I went to the grave of Charles Messier in Paris, who's like an astronomer who a lot of my work was related to, and I get quite a lot from going to people's graves. I don't really know why. It's like the same. It's not a veneration for me, but it is like a little, and I don't know if it's proximity to their remains. I don't think that's in my head that this is the closest I'll ever get to them, someone who is significant to me. But maybe there's a bit of that, like. This is the most proximate I can get to them.
I tell you what's interesting is this idea that, imagine husband and wife attending this church, and every week, and then one of them dies, and so they have the funeral here at this church, and then they move outside, and their partner's buried here, and then the following Sunday, the remaining partner comes back to church. And so they come back to worship, in the place where the funeral was and right next to where their partner, wife or husband is. And you just have this sense of death it's with you all the way. It's not like something that happens over there and we quickly move on from it. It's like part of forever them going to church is them visiting that grave and giving thanks and grieving. It's all mixed in together. That person might have been baptised or their kids might have been baptised there. That's all pretty rich. That's a rich sense of locality and place. And
part of me wonders if that makes it harder to move on. If every week you're coming and seeing a reminder of, I guess if it's your wife, there's enough things that are going to remind you of that anyway, that the grave's just another one. But I would feel like if someone really close to me died and I saw their grave every week, I wonder if I'd find that difficult.
Yeah. Depends what you mean by moving on. Like grieving thoroughly or quickly forgetting or, not being... like grief isn't something to be escaped from. It's kind of carrying grief with you, for a while. If the love has been long, the grief should be long in a sense, and this might give structure to it. Different for everyone. It's just interesting that was the norm for a long while in this culture. Yeah.
I used to find graves really scary when I was young, walking around here, like walking over dead bodies. Yeah. It's funny how my attitude to them has changed somewhat. I find them far less spooky and creepy than I did when I was younger.
I think we were shaped by that scene in BMX Bandits, at night time. It's a whole other thing.
And like Thriller and things like that.
Yeah.